welcome to Parents Anonymous podcast. My name is Tal,
Hi, my name is Rupali.
and we would like to welcome all of you here today. So, just a disclaimer: the views on Parents Anonymous podcast are 100% ours. They're crafted with love, chaos, and whatever was left of our sanity after bedtime. So, yeah, thank you for joining us. So we got there. Rupali's again. They were doing the same testing, similar to the morning when we went after I got the amniotic fluid checked, and they have the bands around your belly and just testing for this. They call it like essentially a stress test on the baby. And now obviously you're feeling contractions, and that's where that button I mentioned earlier
Yes.
is coming into play, so that when they look, it almost looks like an ECG style paper that's printing out,
Yeah.
and then you would feel contraction. And what happens is that you'd push that button, which records at that time on that paper a contraction, and then they see how the baby's responding, the heart rate. And the heart rate will be quite up there for a baby. You're looking at the 150, 160,
Yeah.
170. So
Yeah.
that's all within normal range. And if you're unsure, yeah, just ask the nurse and doctor that's there
Yeah.
if you're unsure.
And when we did roll in, it was kind of funny because we rolled in and at that point I was definitely in active labor. There was no denying it. Not only could they see, both of our faces, but they could hear. So they knew that I was in active labor. So the contractions and the clicking, it's more so just to check how much time we have to go. And yeah, so once I got into the triage area and started to, as you said, get all the bands and the blood pressure and everything checked, I started to feel nausea.
Hmm.
So for the nausea at that point, the nurse had offered that, oh, we can give you some IV gravel. They did put an IV in at that time as well, and that's just something that's standard and normal. So I said I actually don't want gravel because gravel makes one sleepy. That's one of the side effects, especially when it's IV. It's a little bit stronger. So I asked for a different medication for nausea that would not make me sleepy. So I
Hmm.
asked for what the other options were, and then I chose from one of the two that they gave me that did help with my nausea. And at that point, I was in active labor, as has been shared already. And then eventually we did transition to a different private room that had a private bathroom, the bed, and all of that. And I was not really laying back. I'd say I was probably more in like a sitting position
Hmm.
at that point. I didn't want to be on the ball or kind of be on the floor or anything like that. I was okay in the bed because I was able to just kind of move and shift around as I
Yeah.
felt comfortable. And somewhere along the time, from when we got to the room to the point that she was born, I was in another world. It's a really weird feeling. Sorry, I'm getting emotional, but
Okay.
it was just a very raw moment for me because I felt so wild and just in another dimension of sorts because that pain was coming and going as it came and went. I was just one with the pain, and we kind of went through the ticks. And around the time that it was shift change for the nurses, which for where we live universally, it's 7 o'clock. So it was around 7 p.m. And that's when our amazing nurse that helped see things through all the way to when our daughter was born, she knew exactly, almost it felt like that, what I wanted and what I needed. So after she came in, she assessed the situation and she understood from Tal that I wanted to have a natural birth. And along the way, they were obviously checking how much I was dilated. And I remember actually before we actually went into the room, the doctor came in and they checked how dilated I was, and I was 3 or 4 centimeters.
Yeah, I want to say about four.
And I remember saying, I was like, "What? I am like screaming here, and I'm only 4 centimeters dilated." And up to the 10 centimeters is, full dilation is when your body's ready to push and get the baby out. But so I was really shocked that I was only at 4. But again, as things progressed, I, kept being one with the pain, and things kept progressing really well. I think I was the next time they checked, I was actually at 7 centimeters, And then not much after that, I was at 10.
Yeah.
So after the nurse came in, because at that point the pain was at its absolute worst, probably around, I think, 7:30.
Hmm.
The pain was at its absolute worst. So at that point, the nurse offered some IV fentanyl, and she knew we were just, yeah, she just got us. I felt like, she just understood me. And then at that point, I said, yes, I do want the IV fentanyl, and it really just took the edge off in that time. And then, she would do some dilation checks, and then she did say that for 1 hour before the pushing timeline, there's no medications.
Hmm.
So when she gave me the IV fentanyl, it worked great the first time. And I think it was maybe an hour after that, she gave it again with something for nausea again. And it actually didn't help that time. It just made me kind of nauseous. And then
Yeah.
after that, I said, you know what, I don't want it anymore. But the first time, it really did take the edge off,
Yeah.
which was great. And then as things were progressing and we did move into the room, I started to have a lot of pain in my lower back, that bone in my lower back, my sacrum area,
Yeah.
and that's where I felt like the really really sharp pain, like things were pushing and adjusting in my pelvis, which obviously they were. But at that point, the nurse asked Hal to help rub my back with every single contraction. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So as she was feeling that pain in the lower back, again, you're not the fentanyl's kind of worn off, like the pain medication. So the nurse recommended that I gently push and rub my hand on your lower back in that sacrum area, just right above the tailbone, and
Hmm.
sometimes even into the tailbone.
Hmm.
And then that essentially looked like just pushing and then just doing a circular motion like that, and that would help give you relief.
Yeah.
Um, and during that time, like, you're exhausted. So like me trying to, it's like, okay, coach, put me in kind of thing. I'm in there and just trying to push and support your back and hopefully alleviate some of that pressure
Yeah.
that, the baby and all that movements causing.
Yeah, yeah, and it did make a difference for me because it was a back labor. It wasn't like it was front-sided or kind of all over. It was really in my back. So that pressure from the back, it just allowed me to just again work through those contractions with as little pain medications as possible. And at that point, it's obviously too late for any sort of epidural or anything. Not that I wanted that, but just think about that as things are progressing for you. What is the right timing when it comes to if I do want an epidural, if I can't imagine dealing with this pain, then think about the timeline of how quickly you ask for that. Because if it's too late, then it's a no.
Yeah. So we can essentially say like the labor is now really progressing by like 5 p.m. onward,
Yeah.
right? And then to 7 p.m. you were mentioning with the medication. So like have those discussions with your partner and your medical team about, hey, is gravel something that's going to work for me, or is there a different type of medication that will alleviate the nausea but not make me sleepy, and then the pain stuff as well. That's just something that you will have to assess for yourself.
Yeah.
Some people, they call it is it opioid naive,
Hmm.
meaning that you have never taken any sort of pain medication,
Yeah.
especially opiate based, which they're very
The
strong.
strong. Yeah.
I've had a few surgeries myself, and I've been given those after, and they have a really strong effect on the pain.
Hmm.
So all that kind of stuff plays into, um, the scenario as well. So know yourself and ask those questions and have a plan in place.
Yeah.
Thankfully, Rapali was very self-aware and has a little bit of knowledge. So then she had told me all that information, and during her, labor and that pain that she was fighting through, those contractions, I was able to communicate that to the nurse,
Yeah.
and I felt comfortable knowing that I'm honoring your wishes, and that during all that, that was taken care of.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of the nursing staff, because you have to recognize that after a certain point in triage, the doctor will come assess you. Again, it's different for people. And if you have a midwife, it's a whole different story as well. But in our case, we did not have a midwife. And the physician came in the beginning at triage, and that's when they checked the dilation. And then it's really you and the nurse. The nurse is at the point when you're in active labor, the nurse is one to one. So,
Mhm.
meaning that the only time they're leaving the room is to go document something or to go grab something for you. So
Yeah.
it's one to one with that nurse at that time up until you get to that point where you actually are ready to push and you are ready to, get into that pushing, which can sometimes take a long time as well.
Yeah. Again, every labor's different, and people have gone labored for hours, days. For us, fortunately, it was a lot. I would say quick
Yeah,
in the big
in the
scheme of
big
things.
scheme, it was.
And
Yeah.
then just also want to mention that we're very fortunate in our area with the hospital we were at, the maternity unit. When you're a laboring mother, you have your own private room.
Hmm.
That may not be the case where you live, so please have those discussions as well.
Yeah.
And if you have a midwife that follows your case, then just have that conversation as well, how that
Yeah.
will play into the labor.
Yeah.
There's so many different factors for us. Also, the maternity doctors that we saw, and the one doctor that you saw throughout the pregnancy, that group of doctors actually works on the maternity unit where
Hmm.
we live, and that your doctor may or may not be on shift that day or night.
Yeah.
So if you do want to get to know, then you can always talk to your clinic and see which doctors are working, and that also helps with the comfort level and the delivery as well.
Yeah, and I think this is the point where, again, it's important to have those conversations with your support person, your partner, that this is what I want.
Yeah,
Because you may not be in a state where you can speak for yourself and advocate for yourself when it comes to the medical decision making and the kind of options you have,
yeah,
when it comes to epidural and all of that. So make sure your support person, your partner, knows what that is.
exactly.
And now I think, actually, before we go into talking about pushing and all of that, let's talk about some other options for pain and for nausea. So, as we shared through the IV, there's multiple options when it comes to things for nausea. And when it comes for pain, I actually don't know what those other options are, but I know that for me, it was fentanyl because it is quick acting and it works almost instantly, that it hits you with the pain and it eases off, and then kind of things come back really quickly as well. So it doesn't last
Yeah,
very long, but the effect of it is almost immediate. There's also laughing gas, which can be helpful as well. So that's something to consider. For me, I didn't really think it would be helpful, and I had heard from somebody that it actually made them nauseous as well. So
yeah.
because I didn't expect to be feeling nauseous, I already had, I said decline that and that I didn't want that. So
So yeah, have those conversations as well, and know, uh, in the medical field, there's so many different medications that the doctors utilize, and then where you live, they may or may not have those as well. So it was nice having a good team of nurses and doctors at the hospital we were at, and they provided you with that information
yeah,
that, hey, this is an option, this isn't, and just know that with any sort of medication, there's always a risk associated.
yeah,
So please, know those risks.
yeah.
So as we slowly wrap up this episode, we're gonna talk about the final laboring
Yeah,
part.
yeah. So I think with the next episode, we will talk about stage 3 and 4 of labor, but we will talk about the pushing in this episode because that's part of your active
Mhm.
labor. And it's, again, different for everyone. Some of it, for me, in my experience, it was really trying to figure out what kind of pushing you're doing. And everyone is different. You really don't know until you're in that moment of how you are supposed to be pushing. So when they say, that it takes somebody 2 hours to push, that actually is true because you're those 2 hours or for a chunk of it, you're actually trying to figure out how to push this baby.
Mhm.
And once that clicks for you, then it progresses quickly. So
Yeah,
for us, I pushed for an hour,
yeah, maybe a little more. Hour.
maybe hour and a half,
Yeah.
hour 15. So for us, when we were in that, so pushing is really until you get to that 10 centimeter dilation, they don't encourage you to push. So
Mhm.
once you get to that 10 centimeter dilation, that's when you start figuring out how to push. And there's different ways. And for me, there was a few different things and options that we tried. And then eventually something clicked. And I don't even know what, positioning or which way things were. But eventually, after trying for a good half hour, 45 minutes, I had the right, way that I was meant to push. And once that clicked for me, things were actually okay after that because as every contraction comes in, you push
Hmm.
and then you ease off to be able to breathe, maybe have like a
A
ice
little,
chip or
yeah,
something like
and rest
that.
a little bit.
Yeah, like catch your breath. And then when that contraction starts again you're going to push
Yeah.
and then things ease off again. So for us, as you guys heard in the beginning, 3 a.m. in the morning is with our firstborn is when our water broke, and she was born at 9:41
Yeah.
p.m. the same day.
Same day. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then just to give you guys a little bit quick background, because sometimes people listen to certain words and they don't know what that means. So we've already mentioned contractions. That's the body contracting and getting ready to push the baby out. The baby is encased in that amniotic sac, like I mentioned. It's within the uterus. So the baby's gonna come out through the cervix. So when Rapali was mentioning the dilation, that's how much that opening, the cervix,
Yes.
um, is progressing in that full opening. So they usually is it 10 centimeters the
Yeah, 10
ideal
centimeter. Yeah, there's dilation and there's effacement, I think it's
facement.
called,
Yeah,
right? So, which is the thinning. So, both things need to happen in order for you to be ready to be at that pushing point.
yeah,
So, not only is it that the opening of the cervix needs to be at the 10 centimeter point, but the actual thickness or thinness
hmm
of that cervix, it needs to be as thin as possible. And that's important as well when you're pushing.
exactly. And that's why it's very important. It's a very fine line when it comes to being awake and feeling those contractions. That'll really help keeping the baby safe and pushing that baby out in a timely manner so that it's not putting undue risk on the baby and yourself as well. And as those hormones release, those actually help the contractions for one, and then that dilation as well.
Yeah. And for us, in the time that I was pushing, there was no doctor in the room for the first while. So, not until did I figure out the right way to push, that's when the nurse called the doctor and multiple individuals into the room. They bring in the bassinet that has, the special light and has everything in there,
Yeah,
a stethoscope for the baby and all
scale.
sorts of the scale, everything that needs to be in the room preparing for that delivery. So up until the point that I wasn't, pushing the right way, that's when after that is when the doctor
Yeah.
came in, and then it was all hands on deck. And again, as Tal shared in the beginning, when that contraction is happening, everything stops. There's no going in and out of the room. There's no, touching the mom to offer her something. There's no blood pressure checking, nothing. Like you're just, everything is on
Yeah.
hold at that point. And then once that contraction kind of eases off, that's when people kind of start moving around again. It's like a freeze, unfreeze
Yeah,
situation.
yeah. And as a partner, you're there holding hands or just supporting, saying encouraging things.
Yes.
And Rapali had already again going back to that previous planning process had mentioned like if when I'm in that labor, like I just would hope that you just encourage me
Yeah.
and be positive
Yeah.
as well. So that's very important. And also, just want to mention, in case you don't see your doctor for a while, just know that there could be another mom having a baby at the
Yeah.
same time.
Absolutely.
So these doctors are amazing, and they do, this work. And sometimes there's only one or two doctors on shift at that point in time. So be patient, rely on your
Yeah.
nurse. Nurses are great, and they know what they're doing, and they specialize on that unit. So
Hmm. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And then as we shared, 9:41 p.m. is when our daughter was born. So after she was born, right away, she kind of, we will never forget that moment. It's an absolutely life changing moment. I feel like for any parent, you never forget that moment. And I remember when, I had pushed her out and then you hear her scream or cry and then they put her on my chest and I'll never forget that moment. That's just something that's, entrenched in my memory forever.
yeah. It was yeah. take your pictures, take your camera, and it's the nurses are great as well for that. They'll take the camera and take pictures of that moment, that
Yeah.
bringing that new life
Yeah.
into this world. We are going to cover the post birth, 24, 48 hours, what that looks like in the hospital
Yeah.
in another episode, because there's
Yeah.
just so much to talk about. So for today's episode, I hope you guys enjoyed listening, and hopefully uh, educated in some way or another about the labor process.
Yeah. And if you guys, as we've shared in the beginning, and always, if there's questions or if you want to share your own experiences, please, please reach out to us, and through our Instagram and our YouTube, and or through our email, whatever works for you. But we, if there's something that you're, approaching and you're thinking about different things, and if there's something that relates to us from our experiences, please share.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for listening, and thank you for watching Parents Anonymous podcast. And we'll catch you guys next time.
Bye, guys.
Okay. Bye.